The illusion of virtue, men of ambition, men of strength, listen well. For in your pursuit of power, fortune, and glory, there is a trap more dangerous than the blade of an enemy, more fatal than the schemes of rivals. It is the illusion of virtue, the mask worn by some women, a mask so convincing that kings, warriors, and wise men have all fallen beneath its charm. Let me speak plainly, for the truth is rarely spoken. Not all that shines is gold, and not every smile conceals loyalty. From the dawn of history, men have been blinded not by swords but by appearances. When a woman carries herself with grace, when her voice is sweet, when her face glows with beauty, the mind of man rushes to believe that virtue lives within her as well. He convinces himself that purity and goodness flow naturally from charm and elegance, that behind a tender glance lies only kindness. But this is where folly begins. For some women, like some men, cloak their true desires in the costume of innocence, and if a man does not learn to pierce the mask, he will mistake poison for medicine and ruin for salvation. The illusion of virtue is dangerous because it feeds a man's deepest need. Every man longs for trust, for a companion who eases the burden of life, who gives him comfort in battle and counsel in doubt. When he finds one who appears gentle, supportive, and devoted, his heart leaps to surrender, he lowers his guard, he silences suspicion, and he imagines himself safe. But safety is an illusion, for while some women are indeed sincere, others have perfected the art of appearing so. They know that men crave loyalty, and so they offer the appearance of loyalty while pursuing their own hidden designs. History itself testifies to this truth. Look upon the great men who were betrayed not by their enemies, but by those who sat beside them. Kings lost their crowns because they believed in the soft words of women who feigned devotion. Generals were led into ruin because they mistook ambition for love. Even in the courts of Italy, I witnessed rulers undone because they trusted the veil of virtue rather than the reality of interest. The downfall of men has too often been written in the ink of misplaced faith. Consider why the illusion of virtue holds such power. It is because the mask appeals not to reason but to desire. Men do not wish to see corruption in beauty, treachery in affection, or cunning behind kindness. To admit such things would be to stain their own happiness, and so they prefer the lie. They cling to the comfort of believing that what pleases their eyes also pleases their fate. This weakness makes men vulnerable, for the woman who knows her charm can wield it like a weapon, leading him wherever her ambition points, and the man, blind in admiration, will follow willingly into his own destruction. But do not mistake my words as a condemnation of all women. Just as there are men of honor and men of deceit, so too are there women of sincerity and women of calculation. My words aim not at women alone, but at the blindness of men who refuse to discern the difference. For power belongs not to those who wear masks, but to those who can see through them. To govern wisely, to live with strength, a man must train his mind to judge not by appearance but by action, not by charm but by consistency, not by words but by the fruits they bear. The illusion of virtue also thrives because society itself praises it. From poets to priests, from minstrels to scholars, men are taught to worship beauty and equate it with goodness. Songs speak of the gentle maiden whose heart is pure, stories exalt the loyal wife who suffers for love, and thus men grow believing that beauty and virtue are twins. Yet, the world is not a poem, it is a battlefield of interest and ambition. In this battlefield, some women cloak themselves in the robes of virtue, while pursuing desires no less ruthless than any soldiers. The wise man, therefore, must practice suspicion as a shield. When he encounters beauty, let him not surrender to it blindly. When he hears tender words, let him measure them against deeds. When he feels his heart moved by loyalty, let him test whether that loyalty stands when trials arise. For the mask of virtue cannot endure forever. Time, circumstance, and adversity reveal what charm conceals. Only the man who observes patiently, who judges steadily, escapes the fate of those who trusted too quickly. The illusion of virtue is not merely a danger in the chamber of love, it is a force that shapes kingdoms. A ruler who is deceived by such illusions risks his throne. If he places the affairs of his state into the hands of one whose devotion is feigned, he will find his policies twisted, his secrets betrayed, and his enemies strengthened. The ruin of rulers often begins not in the battlefield, but in the bedchamber, where whispers guide decisions more powerfully than armies. Men who imagine themselves masters discover too late that they were puppets, moved by strings invisible but strong. Thus, men must learn the first law of wisdom, to separate the appearance of virtue from the reality of character. It is not enough to see a smile and call it kindness. It is not enough to hear soft words and call them truth. Virtue is known not in the ease of peace but in the test of conflict. The woman who stands firm when storms strike, whose loyalty holds when gain calls elsewhere, she is virtuous indeed. But the one who wears only the mask, who adorns herself in false devotion, she will cast it aside the moment her interest demands. So I tell you, men who pursue power, men who dream of greatness, open your eyes. Do not let the mask of virtue blind you, for behind the sweetest smile may lie ambition sharper than steel, and behind the gentlest hand may rest the will to control your fate. This version is around 80-30-80-50 words, fully Machiavellian in style, narrated as if Machiavelli himself is speaking. The weapon of desire, men who seek strength, men who wish to rule, you must hear a truth that many ignore. Desire is not merely an emotion, not merely a pleasure of the senses. Desire is a weapon sharpened and perfected in the hands of some women, a force that has toppled kingdoms and enslaved even the mightiest rulers. And it is this weapon, more subtle than the dagger, more irresistible than gold, that men must learn to guard against. From the first dawn of history, empires have risen and fallen not only because of armies and treaties, but because of desire. Kings crowned in glory, armored in steel, have undone themselves at the feet of beauty. Warriors who feared no blade, who stood firm against enemies, crumbled like fragile glass when faced with the power of seduction. The battlefield of love has claimed more men than the battlefield of war, for in war a man can see his enemy, but in desire he often kneels before it willingly. Consider how desire works its spell. A man who feels attraction believes it is harmless, a passing delight of the senses. Yet, as the flame grows, it blinds his reason. He begins to justify decisions that weaken him. He abandons duties for fleeting pleasures. He grants favors that he would deny to his own brother. His loyalty, his fortune, even his very will, bend beneath the weight of passion. And here lies the danger. While a man loses his strength to desire, a woman who knows this truth can gain mastery over him. She can turn his passion into her throne, his weakness into her crown. History gives us countless warnings. Think of Helen of Troy, whose beauty dragged nations into a war that lasted a decade. Think of Cleopatra, who bent Rome's greatest leaders to her will, ensnaring both Caesar and Antony, changing the course of empires. These women did not fight with armies. Their weapon was desire itself, and it proved sharper than the spear, more devastating than any legion. A man who allows himself to be conquered by passion becomes a servant to the very one he believes he has won. In my own observations, I have seen powerful men brought to ruin because they believed desire was theirs to control. They imagined they possessed beauty, when in truth beauty possessed them. They thought they were the hunters when in truth they were prey. Such is the cunning of desire, it convinces a man he is master while it silently binds him in chains. The man who surrenders to this weapon without caution is like a general who lays down his sword in the midst of battle, believing himself safe because the enemy smiles. But why is desire such an effective weapon? Because it appeals not only to the body but to the pride of man. When a woman directs her charm upon him, he believes himself chosen, special, elevated above all others. His vanity swells, his chest expands, and in this false triumph he becomes careless. Desire does not merely intoxicate his flesh, it intoxicates his ego. He sees her admiration as proof of his greatness, and in that moment he no longer questions her motives. He hands her the keys to his heart, his fortune, and at times, his very destiny. The weapon of desire also thrives because men are taught to glorify it. Poets sing of love as the highest virtue, painters immortalize beauty as if it were divine, and society itself whispers that surrender to passion is noble. But I say to you, surrender is not noble, it is dangerous. For while a man believes he is experiencing joy, he may be walking toward ruin. Many a throne has been lost, not because a rival was stronger, but because the ruler was too weak to resist the smile of one who wielded desire as a sword. And let us not deceive ourselves. This weapon is often deliberate. Some women know the effect of beauty and affection, and they wield it with intent. They study how to hold a gaze, how to speak with softness, how to ignite longing in the heart of man. They know that once passion stirs, reason falters. They know that once a man tastes desire, he fears losing it, and in that fear he will make concessions he would never otherwise make. A kingdom may be given for a kiss, a secret revealed for a caress, a crown surrendered for the promise of love. The wise man must therefore discipline himself. He must learn to recognize the moment when desire begins to cloud judgment. He must train his will to resist the sweetness that hides danger. For the man who believes himself too strong to be swayed is already half defeated, while the man who acknowledges the power of desire can guard against it. Self-control is the armor against this weapon, for no seduction can enslave the man who governs himself. But understand this clearly: desire is not evil in itself. It is a natural force, a fire within human nature. What makes it perilous is how easily it is turned into a tool of manipulation. The man who indulges without reflection, who gives his mind and soul to passion, becomes vulnerable. Yet the man who sees desire for what it is, an influence, a temptation, a weapon, retains his strength. He may enjoy beauty without worshipping it. He may love without surrendering his judgment, and in this balance, he preserves both pleasure and power. So hear me, men of ambition. While swords may cut the flesh and gold may tempt the hand, it is desire that conquers the mind. Guard your heart, guard your reason, for the smile that enchants you may not be a gift of love, but a weapon designed to rule you. This sits at Lee 820 words, in pure Machiavellian narrator tone, fully expanded and flowing like a video script. Power behind the curtain. Men speak of crowns, thrones, and titles as if these alone hold power. They see the king seated upon his chair of gold, the general armored upon his horse, the minister clothed in velvet robes, and they believe power rests openly in such places. But I tell you this often, the true power does not sit upon the throne, nor march with the army, nor sign decrees with ink. The true power dwells behind the curtain, whispered in private chambers, carried upon tender voices, wielded by hands unseen. And in many such cases it is women, without official rank, who shape the course of nations more than the men who imagine themselves rulers. The illusion of authority blinds men to the subtlety of influence. A king believes himself sovereign because his word becomes law. A general believes himself mighty because thousands obey his command. Yet, if the heart of that king is swayed, if the judgment of that general is softened, if his decisions are bent by the whispers of another, then is he truly the master? Or is he but the instrument of one who stands beside him? For history teaches us that while men hold the scepter, some women hold the soul of the man, and by holding it, they direct the scepter as well. Consider the courts of Europe, where queens and courtesans, wives and mistresses, often held greater influence than ministers or diplomats. A ruler who spends his nights at the side of a woman, sharing secrets in moments of passion, reveals more to her than to his closest advisors. A gentle word in such an hour can shape his policies, turn his suspicions, and guide his choices. The woman who knows this art does not need soldiers, for she commands through affection what armies could not conquer through force. Men wake each morning believing themselves sovereign, while their course has already been charted by the hand that lay upon their chest while they slept. This is the essence of power behind the curtain. It is invisible. It leaves no trace, yet it bends the strongest wills. Men believe they are acting from reason, yet their decisions bear the mark of whispers spoken in candlelight. The greatest danger of this hidden power is that it escapes all accountability. The king may be judged, the minister may be opposed, but the influence of the woman behind the curtain is never placed upon trial, for the world sees her only as companion, never as commander. Thus her power is safer than the crown itself, for none will strike at what they cannot see. Let us recall examples that should not be forgotten. Catherine de' Medici in France, who while not always seated upon the throne, ruled through her sons and through her cunning. She was called a queen mother, but she was in truth the queen of power, moving pieces upon the board of Europe while men imagined themselves players. And was it not said of Louis XV that Madame de Pompadour, his mistress, held more sway over him than his ministers? Wars were waged, treaties were signed, fortunes were shifted, all because the ear of the king belonged not to his counsel, but to the woman who whispered to him in private. Such power is not always intentional, but it is always real. Some women may simply love, yet even love itself creates influence. When a man places his heart in the hands of another, his will is no longer his alone. His decisions are weighed not merely by strategy, but by how they affect the one he adores. He consults her opinion, he fears her disappointment, he longs for her approval. In this way, even a woman who does not seek power still holds it, for affection itself binds a ruler more securely than chains. The wise man must therefore ask, who truly governs? Is it the one whose name appears in decrees, or the one who guides his thoughts in silence? Power is not always seen in public, often it hides in shadow, more potent precisely because it is unseen. The man who ignores this truth risks becoming a figurehead, imagining himself master while serving another's ambition. And yet, there is also skill in how some women exercise this hidden power. They do not command directly, for commands arouse resistance. Instead, they suggest, they persuade, they shape choices by making them appear to be the man's own. The greatest mastery is when the ruler believes the decision is his, when in truth it was planted by another. Thus, the curtain conceals not only the power but the method, and men, blinded by pride, never suspect how thoroughly they are led. To ignore this reality is to invite ruin. For if a man rules without recognizing the influence beside him, he will fail to understand the true forces shaping his reign. He may punish ministers, dismiss generals, blame rivals. Yet the root of his decisions may lie elsewhere, in the private chamber, in the whispered counsel of a woman who has captured his devotion. Those who wish to endure in power must look beyond the throne, beyond the court, and into the shadows, where influence works unseen but decisive. Therefore, men of ambition, I tell you, beware not only the rivals who confront you in daylight, but also the voices that guide you in the night. For the true ruler may not wear the crown upon his head, but may rest quietly beside it, unseen, unheard, yet commanding all. This narration is UA 30 words, flowing in a dramatic Machiavellian style, and ends without closure as you requested. The danger of blind trust. Among the countless errors that men commit, none proves more costly than the placing of blind trust. Trust itself is not evil, but when it is given without question, without measure, without the wisdom of caution, it becomes a dagger hidden in the cloak of friendship. And when such trust is given to women who conceal their ambition, their restlessness, or their shifting loyalty, the ruin that follows is swifter and more merciless than any army's assault. A man imagines that trust is the highest form of love, the noblest gift he can offer. He convinces himself that to doubt is dishonorable, that suspicion is cruel, and that true devotion requires absolute faith. Yet what is blind trust but the surrender of judgment? What is unquestioning faith but the laying down of one's weapons before one knows if the other hand means to strike? To trust blindly is to abandon reason, and the man who abandons reason becomes prey to those who know how to exploit his weakness. History is littered with men destroyed not by open enemies, but by those they trusted without question. Kings who revealed their secrets to women they believed loyal, only to find those secrets passed into the ears of rivals. Rulers who surrendered their hearts and crowns to affection, only to be betrayed when greater fortune beckoned. Merchants who placed their fortunes in the hands of companions, only to watch both wealth and loyalty vanish overnight. The lesson repeats itself in every age. Men fall not because they lacked power, but because they trusted unwisely. The danger lies in this: trust blinds the eyes. When a man places blind faith in a woman, he refuses to see the signs that contradict his belief. He dismisses evidence, silences his doubts, and convinces himself that loyalty is eternal. He interprets every action in her favor, even when the truth is before him. And in this blindness, he creates his own downfall, for nothing is more perilous than a man who cannot see what stands clearly before him. Consider the nature of loyalty itself. Few in this world, whether men or women, are bound by eternal devotion. Most are guided by interest, by gain, by the pursuit of advantage. A woman may indeed be loyal for a time, but if circumstances change, if fortune offers her greater reward, if ambition calls her elsewhere, if her heart grows restless, then her loyalty may shift as swiftly as the winds. To expect otherwise is folly. For loyalty without reason, loyalty without interest, is rare, and the man who builds his life upon it builds upon sand. This is not to say that no woman can be trusted. Indeed, some women prove steadfast just as some men prove steadfast. But the error lies in assuming that all devotion is unbreakable, that affection alone guarantees fidelity. A wise man tests loyalty as he would test the strength of a chain before placing his weight upon it. He observes, he measures, he discerns whether the bond holds firm in adversity as well as in ease. Blind trust ignores this testing, it leaps without looking, and the fall is inevitable. The most dangerous aspect of blind trust is how it softens the will of a man. Once he convinces himself that betrayal is impossible, he becomes careless. He shares secrets he should guard, he exposes vulnerabilities he should conceal, he grants power he should retain. And once these are given, they cannot be recalled. A woman who possesses such knowledge or influence, if loyal, may use it for his benefit. But if her loyalty shifts, she wields his own trust against him, turning his weapons into her tools. In this way, blind trust arms betrayal with all it needs to strike. Let us not deceive ourselves. Betrayal rarely comes from strangers. The stranger has no access, no intimacy, no claim upon a man's confidence. Betrayal comes from those closest, for only those closest are entrusted with what can be used to destroy. A ruler is not undone by his distant subjects, but by those who share his table. A man is not ruined by those who envy him from afar, but by the woman to whom he has entrusted his very heart. Thus, blind trust multiplies the danger, for it ensures that the knife will always be in reach of the one best positioned to strike. And why do men persist in this error? Because blind trust comforts them, it spares them the effort of vigilance. To believe in eternal loyalty is easier than to live in caution. It allows them to rest, to dream, to surrender responsibility. But comfort is the companion of weakness, and weakness is the road to ruin. The man who trusts blindly does so not because it is wise, but because it is easy. Yet in seeking ease, he invites destruction. The wise man does not forbid trust, but he tempers it. He trusts with his eyes open, with his judgment awake, with his reason unclouded. He entrusts only what can be risked, and he keeps his deepest power in his own hand. He knows that affection may be true, but he tests it with time and trial. He does not mistake loyalty in prosperity for loyalty in hardship, nor does he believe that devotion in words proves devotion in deeds. In this way, he protects himself from the ruin that blind trust brings, while still allowing the possibility of genuine bond. So hear me, men who seek strength. Trust may be offered, but let it not be blind. For the man who closes his eyes to truth and places his fate entirely in another's hands has already chosen the path of his own undoing.